as you can probably tell from the title on here, I'm going to be starting to test weapon mixtures on ships. The main thing is because every game that I've ever played, especially MMOs, there's always meta builds, right? Always meta builds. And every game I've ever played, everybody follows those meta builds. But I've always been able to beat them for the most part. You know, unless you just go, like, the goal is to go, you either go even or you beat. That's about all right? And my builds are always for the generalist player. I don't care about macho Chad players needing your meta builds. And so this is kind of the debate when you start seeing these things. They're talking about weapon balancing coming in with the new damage models and stuff. But everyone's using lasers on their ships, and I'm starting to think that's probably not the best situation. Now, yeah, most people they're doing these fighter ships and they have, you know, multiple laser guns on there. Well, now if we take something like the Connie, for example, right? It has a few guns on there. Now, when you look at this, they're going to be saying right now meta guns are lasers. Everyone uses lasers, everything else. Now, if we take a light fighter, and a light fighter is going to attack the Connie, it's bringing lasers. We are bringing, basically, we have missiles. So we're going to be able to shoot missiles at it. And then after that, we're just going to have lasers. So you have to go through their shields to kill this fighter, which allows them to have time to get to you. I think a better situation is you shoot the missiles off, you have one ballistic cannon, and then one frontal laser on the main weapons of the Connie. This allows you to damage shields with bigger lasers to potentially get their shields down faster, and then hit them with ballistics that go through shields. And this might not be fully implemented in the game yet, but even if it's not, I think because you can knock parts off of ships anyway right now, it's still fine. This also means that things with like Drake ships, for example, when they don't have armor, and you think that they're going to be able to survive ballistic damage in the future potentially, they're probably going to be glass cannons. I would assume they would be glass cannons for the most part. So if this was like a Buccaneer or something, that ballistic shot's going to go through, even if it does half damage. You could potentially knock a hole in the Connie in the future, or a hole in the fighter in the future, which could make it lose oxygen, lose power. You could knock a wing off so it loses flight control on planets. The big one though is that you could knock off their gun, and eventually, when they have targeting for these weapons, long range targeting for ships, ballistics going through shields have the potential of knocking off your weapons from your ships, which reduces your overall DPS. Okay? But the big one here is it's like, say we took this Connie and we put all ballistics on this Connie, and you had all lasers on your fighter or whatever ship that you're bringing into this battle. Even if it's Connie v Connie, I have ballistics and you have lasers. Your lasers are going to be hitting my shields, and my shields are going to be at max power. Okay? So my shields and my thrusters would be my main concern because all of my ballistics wouldn't need any extra power to them. So I'm going to be able to move a little bit more, and I'm going to be able to have better defense. My guns, even though they do less damage going through your shields, would have the potential of knocking off your laser guns, which would give me more DPS long term than your ship. Now, in the Connie situation, I think there's a different way to go about this, and that's having, at least for now, until they add in more weapon types, you have one ballistic, one laser, and then you're going to have two distortion. And this is kind of a twofold thing going on here. So, in the front of the ship, you can have bigger guns, slave to the pilot. If you're going up against a big ship, all right, if you're going up against a big ship, they're going to have the missiles. They can pepper them before the fight even starts, potentially doing some damage, reducing the armor, maybe, depending on what they do. Maybe you hit a vital component or something. Then you're going to have lasers coming in, reducing their shields. Then you'd have ballistics that come in. They go through the shields, potentially damaging the shields, and damaging the hull to go with the missiles. So if the ballistic damage and the missile damage is enough, you could potentially, cause some physical damage on the ship, to rip off an engine, rip off a wing or a gun, potentially cripple this ship to where it can't fly very well. This would also go for fighters in the same sense because they're lighter weight. You have the potential of doing some serious damage to them if this so happens. And then once they get closer, these defensive turrets or distortions are going to have utility because they can either disable ships later, or they can act as defense basically. So against this bigger ship, smaller arms, because these are size 2 turrets, I don't expect size 2 ballistics or size 2 lasers to really affect a massive ship in the future. The size 2 lasers might be effective versus the shields, but I doubt it's going to be very effective versus very large armor. But distortions, I would expect to be able to go through the armor and then damage the internal components inside of a larger ship, shutting it down, which I think is more important in a large ship battle. The next thing is that the fighters, for instance, they want to get behind the Connie. Okay? They want to get behind you, everything else. The Connies are fairly sluggish. There's a couple of things here. So let's say if the Connie wants to fight or the Connie wants to run, and these fighters manage to get past the initial barrage coming up to them without being, neutralized or at least, somewhat taken out of the fight, these defensive turrets, these little distortion turrets that we have, won't be killing the fighters, okay? I mean, that's kind of sucks that they're not killing them, right? Like, you want them to be able to shoot lasers or shoot ballistics and finish these things off. Well, ballistics can run out of ammo, and if you're going to store extra ammo on this ship, and you're going to fuel, 6 ballistic guns, you're probably going to run out of ammo, and also you have to carry multiple types of ammo. So unless every gun is the same and takes the same ammo type, you're probably going to run out trying to fuel all those. An excess amount of ammo that you would need for multiple guns. And really, you'd probably want the ballistics for like emergencies. So, there is some use cases for it, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. Lasers, you're going to have to go through the fighter's shields. Let me find my mouse real quick. You're going to have to go through the fighter's shields if you use lasers. And these fighters are just going to be dancing around you. Potentially, they also have the potential of destroying the turrets themselves. So if you're using ballistics and the turrets got destroyed, then all your ballistic ammo is basically wasted. So you have that kind of figures as well. The other bit though is that if these guys take enough damage on these shields, they're just gonna like turn away from you and put the backside of the shield to you. Whereas distortions against bigger craft are going to be able to target specific areas of the ship to damage certain components and disable them, lining them up for the lasers and the ballistics if need be. And then against the smaller craft, the distortions are going to be able to hit every side of the shield with AoE damage. So even if they try to move their craft away from you, their shields will eventually go down for the most part. Then they're going to start losing power to their systems, so they're going to lose targeting. They're going to lose, um, thrusters capabilities. So if they're able to outmaneuver you as a pilot, they're just a better pilot than you. Distortions could potentially give you the leg up to actually win the fight or run away. Because even if they're the best pilot in the world, if they lose their targeting reticles, if they lose like thruster control, anything like that, they're not going to be able to do a whole lot against you. And then the next part is this also allows the Connie to easily turn on them if they need be. So even if you're running away from them and you notice that you've been able to disable them while they're chasing you, the Connie would easily be able to 360 and then shoot missile volleys and stuff at these fighters to finish them off while they're stationary. Also, this puts them in place to get hit by the ballistic guns. So let's say your ballistics on this are like size 5 cannons that have like a really high like initial burst damage. Then that means any ship coming in from a distance, you're going to have the potential to cripple before it gets to you. And then any ship that you're able to disable at closer ranges, you're going to be able to basically just knock them with those cannons once and destroy them instantaneously, potentially conserving more ammunition, I would assume, than you would otherwise. The next thing is that the Connie has that snubcraft. We got to get this one right. It's like that. So the Connie has this snubcraft. This comes with, I believe, lasers and a central nose gun on the Andromeda. And then the Merlin might be better. I think it has more just basic hard points. But this snub is coming, I guess, basically, I don't think you can swap it or anything. It comes with ballistic nose guns. And then you're going to have side guns. So there's a couple of options here. Lasers on the side guns would allow you to chase and fight these fighters. I think potentially you would want them to have lasers But on the other side, distortions could be good as well. I would think potentially this fighter you would run distortions, or you'd run full ballistics. If you run full ballistics, you could run out of ammo, so you'd probably go distortion. If you have multiple guns, you'd probably go half distortion, half lasers. But I think distortions on this fighter, it's not necessarily the best case scenario, but it means that you can line up shots with your ballistic nose gun a little bit easier if you're able to disable somebody's ship, as well as, support the ship with smaller craft that are kind of running around the outside of the ship that you can't get target on, and potentially could help damage components on larger ships in the future. If the larger ships are able to, say, rotate that part of the ship away from the Connie, your snubcraft could run over there and then hammer that side and keep the pressure up on their damage systems potentially. Um, Kind of a hard thing to with the snubcraft, to be honest. Let me look at this. I think it's Kruger. Archimedes. Extra intake and lighter hull compared to. Okay, so this is the different one. Okay, so this has 4 size 1s. So with this, I would probably do 2 distortions, 2 lasers, because that would allow you to both destroy and, like, it would allow you to get the shields down on ships a little bit faster, allow you to destroy small fighter craft, and also allow you to do something against bigger ships potentially in the future. So the Merlin comes with the Andromeda. Has a Gatling cannon with a lightning power engine. Tiger Strike T-19P. Custom variant of the Kruger. Okay, so you get that. So you get 300 rounds of ammo on this ship. I'm fairly sure this has 2 size 1 hard points on the bottom as well. So this is just an example, but in this ship, for example, this is a snub fighter, potentially worse than the other one, the 72. But in this case, you could run lasers or ballistics on the bottom, and you have ballistics in the center here. If you go ballistics, it would be purely to just cripple other fighter craft that are going around your Connie, potentially. And if you went lasers, that would just help you with shields and help you destroy. So you'd probably go lasers on the sides and then ballistics in the middle for anti-fighter kind of capabilities. If your wings get shot off, you're still going to have your ballistics in the center of the ship. But if you go distortions, you can disable those enemy craft a little bit easier, and then also probably have more utility versus bigger ships. Because bigger ships might not necessarily notice this shooting smaller distortions at it. It'd be hard to say. I don't think ballistics are the way to go because they won't do anything versus anything like bigger than it. Lasers would be nice. Um, yeah, I think it'd either be lasers or distortions, depending on if lasers can help you with the enemy shields on bigger ships. That could be a benefit to this. The distortions, I don't know. If you run distortions on this, then you need to use this main gun only for finishing off targets after you've disabled them. These distortions would help the Connie's distortions on the turrets against ships that are around the outside of the Connie. But the problem with this is if you're using distortions, you're forced to use the lasers. I think you'd probably just go lasers on this. Not not worry about using this versus a bigger ship. Just use this versus fighters. So the lasers would basically reduce or take down the shields of the enemy, and then once their shields are down, you hit them with the ballistics. Yeah. So you go lasers and ballistics in this. 300 rounds isn't really that much though, so it's kind of something crazy along those lines. Any case, I think there's basically just a generalist build that people could use. I think as the Connie, for example, here, it's kind of a sluggish ship, needs to rotate to get on target. Probably going to be somewhat hard to deal with really good fighter pilots, where those distortions could potentially help you cover up that weak spot and also still be somewhat useful versus bigger ships. When it comes to other things, though, so it's like say like a Redeemer or something. I think a Redeemer, you would take the bigger guns on the Redeemer and turn them into damage, and then you would probably have distortions or ballistics on the front. Like the smaller weapons would probably be ballistics or distortions. Actually, yeah, I'll go distortions. So like Redeemer wise, it's a very sluggish ship as well. So you could argue about putting distortions on the turrets, but the distortions don't go up to very large guns yet. So if you're going to have a Redeemer, whatever turrets that it has would be your damage. And then your front-facing guns would be your disabling guns. So if you're chasing a ship, you're going to be able to use the distortions to shut it down. And then if you are fighting the ships, you're going to have a lot of damage to just pick off all the fighters that are coming around you because your guns are bigger, essentially here. You'd have the big guns to disable shields, Distortions would help you shut down components and shields as well. Ballistics. If you're going to use ballistics on here, they would replace the distortions. But your ballistics would really only be useful for like small craft fighters and such. But yeah, I think there's like a balance that is to be made with any of the ships on Star Citizen, depending on what your loadouts and stuff are. Because you could easily say, like, these fighters, what if they ran distortions and stuff against the Connie? Well, they could. Um, but the Connie's going to have more powerful shields. So that would be the same thing with ballistics. I mean, they could go with distortions, but the Connie has powerful shields. They could go with ballistics, but Connie's going to have shields and armor. Um, and their best bets would probably be ballistics and lasers. So they have like a package that hits hard with laser guns on your fighters, and then have a little bit of ballistic damage or missiles, like a missile loadout or something along those lines. The Connie's also like a larger ship, so to target components, you'd have to know where it is. So there's kind of that issue as well. The other thing is that the Connie, if it disables a ship with distortions, it has a bunch of utility that it could destroy or board your ship. If you're a fighter and you've disabled a Connie, you have to sit there and keep hitting it over and over to keep it disabled, so you can't really go inside. But if you're part of a bigger crew, you probably could. So there's trade-offs there as well. I don't know. I think just some of these bigger ships, the distortion guns are potentially useful, and even if it isn't the maximum DPS, I've never really ran maximum DPS builds on any MMO that I've played, and generally I've did fine. I'll either beat or go even with most top meta builds and stuff, and I think this would like be fine. You take a super powerful, like, even if this was like an F8 with some crazy, like crazy laser guns, like super crazy laser guns. Best case scenario, it flies up behind the Connie, and you're not able to shoot any of your lasers, ballistics, and or missiles at it. And then you're just going to be able to arm those distortions and start shooting at it. And it might take you a minute before you can actually get rid of those. Even like worst case scenario, he shoots off all your engines and all your guns on the Connie. The distortions, um, maybe might be able to disable it at some point, and then you'd have your missiles left over. But that's kind of a iffy situation, I think. I don't know. Like you could make arguments anyway, I suppose, but the distortions I just think have a lot of flexibility. Just the fact that they're going to be good versus small or big ships probably is the best case scenario that I could really do for it. Because like if you're going to bring a package on board the Connie for like long-term use, you want something that's going to be able to be effective versus big ships and small ships. So the distortions are probably the only thing that would fit that bill at the smaller weapon size. And then you want your main guns when you don't have gunners and stuff to be effective versus big ships or small ships as well. So the lasers would be really good at getting rid of shields on either of them, and then the ballistics would have enough power to help you deal with big ships, while the lasers would also have enough power to help you deal with fighters. And, one of these ballistics that can deal with a big ship can probably do serious damage to a small ship or a fighter if you land the shot, especially if they don't have shields. So I think ballistics with lasers. This also means that you get more shots on your laser cannons down here, less time that you have to reload, so you can potentially put all your power into shields while you're using the lasers, and then swap over to the ballistics while the lasers are recharging without having to reduce your shields. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's a number of reasons. I just think there's potential. People should think about their options, and I know that it's not going to be the maximum DPS, but I don't think the maximum DTS is really what matters. It's all about utility and ease of use when it really comes to MMOs. Like, if you're going to go for a meta build, you're going to have to be try-harding every single time you get into a fight. You never want to relax. Whereas, like, if you have a build that's pretty generally good, you don't have to worry so much. So, like, even if those meta fighters come in, you want to be able to not have to worry about make mistakes. Like, if you run a meta build and you make one mistake and you die, I don't think that's a good build. Because especially when it comes to like war, there's a lot of tactics and stuff that can be involved. And then these fighters, for instance, like they're probably the only ones that you could justify just bringing a basic loadout to kill things with. Fighters should be just basic, simple, to the point, get a job done, go home. But when you get to these bigger ships, I mean, you're not just chasing people down trying to kill them. You have utility, like you can escape, you have cargo, um, a lot of missile loadouts. So there's just a lot more options there. Um, the only thing with like distortions, it's really hard to say with distortions in general because it's just like if you manage to get someone's shields down and apply distortions to them, like if you shut down their engines in atmosphere, they're probably going to die. If you shut down their engines in space, they're pretty much dead as well, as long as it's a 1v1 situation. So you take distortions, like two fighters and one of them have distortions. Distortions might come out on top if they're using lasers, where if like someone's using lasers and ballistics versus lasers and distortions, the ballistics might have a really good chance to cripple an enemy fighter before it has a chance to do anything. Kind of an interesting situation. I think with fighters, like lasers and ballistics would be the best bet because it just means like it means that you're going to have more sustained damage probably at the very beginning of a fight because your lasers are going to have more shots and then your ballistics will be able to work with your lasers if you needed them to. And then if your lasers are recharging, you're going to have the ballistics, and then even when the ballistics go down, you still have lasers. And lasers and distortions. Lasers and distortions, you could argue as well. Like, so if you go lasers and ballistics, you're going to be better versus lighter, smaller armed craft and fighters, probably. If you go lasers and distortions, you're going to have the ability to shut down enemy shields and shut down their basically you're going to be able to kill them and shut their ship down. And as soon as their ship is affected in any way, like you're getting an advantage for the most part. But versus bigger ships, the lasers are going to have probably minimum effect, maybe help versus shields a little bit. Ballistics are probably not going to do anything. So if you're in a small fighter and you're going up against a big ship, you're probably looking at lasers and distortions. If you're going against a small ship, you're probably looking at lasers and ballistics. So in general, I'd probably just go lasers and distortions. because you'd have more utility with small fighters. Any case, just some stuff to think about. I'm gonna hop off here. I gotta go to work. Y'all guys have a good one.